Hey everyone, welcome to Vistata. This week we'll be tackling one of the most common home fermentations, which is sourdough starter. Like most fermentations, it's easier than you think, so let's get started. There's no need for precision, and you really don't even have to zero your scale, but wind up with about 150 grams of bread flour. That's 485 minus 331. Grab your finest measuring cup if you're going that route. For those of you who are interested in grams, I went ahead and zeroed this properly this time. I'm going for room temperature water here. The most important thing is that it's not too hot. You don't want to kill everything living in your flour. If you're a stickler for precision, try to get half a cup, but if not, just try to get close. In grams, it turned out to be about 116, so shoot for something close to that. I'm just putting this into a small mixing bowl. You don't need anything big, you're using a small amount. Now I'm using that bread flour. Do you have to use bread flour? No, you don't. But it worked out really well here. Go ahead and dump in your room temperature water. And mix it up. In the end, it's going to reach a nice thick consistency. Can it be too thick? To a point. You don't want dry chunks in there. Can it be too thin? You don't want it to be water. It should look like really sticky bread dough. Kind of like that. I'm gonna stick to that spoon. Beautiful. Now go ahead and pick out a container you're going to do your fermentation in. My advice is choose something clear so you can see what's going on, and big enough that you can avoid a spillover. It's also wise to choose a container you won't miss, because your starter is going to be living in this for the foreseeable future. I miss mine quite a bit. This is a pretty good indication of how thick your starter should be. A little thicker, a little thinner, it's not the end of the world. I'm also filling my container about a third of the way here. Do not go any higher than this. It was at this point when I realized that it wasn't the brightest idea to shoot on a yellow table. And that's about it. It's pretty simple. Next step, grab a towel, throw it on. Like that. Stylish stuff. Storage is pretty simple. Find a nice warm space, plop it down. One thing though, keep it away from other fermenting goods. Kombucha is better for you than it is your bread. Here we are, 2 days later. You probably don't want to leave it this long, but it worked out. What you're going to notice though is there's a very thick crust on top. Is this harmful? No. Is it crunchy? That's some chunky stuff. And sticky stuff. At this point, you're going to notice that your starter has gotten a little thinner. Still gummy, but nothing like it was before. You'll also potentially notice something else. The smell. Ugh. And it's feeding time. You might notice in the bowl that I've already poured out a little bit of this starter, and I'm refilling it with the exact same amount of flour as I had before. That's about half a cup, or 150 grams. Next up the water, just like before, half a cup, or 110-ish grams. Go ahead and stir this guy up again. One thing to watch, you can see this container is getting pretty full at this point. That might come back to haunt you later on. The thickness here is pretty much what it was before. In this case, mine's a little bit thinner. Is that a problem? Nope. Back on top of the fridge. And back on top with the towel. A day later, and check out that liquid on top. Nothing to worry about though. There's a whole lot of it floating on there. Now once I mix this in, you'll notice this is pretty thin. The cultures in here have started to really break down the components of the flour, and the gluten doesn't really stick like it used to. Now at this point we really got to pour some of this stuff out. This container is getting real full. I'm going to pour out about half of it here. Go ahead and add your flour again. And your water. At this point it's just a matter of repeating the same process every single day. You can do this for probably about a week, or in my case I stopped when it stopped stinking. If it's turning to soup like this, you know it's working. Around this time I noticed the smell was improving a little bit, but only a little.
Ugh. Ugh.
Here we go one last time, pouring some out, feeding it, watering it, and looking how high this has gotten. Behold the aftermath. Quite a mess. Interestingly though, it had really ripened at this point, and in a good way. It wasn't smelly, not like cheese. It smelled like croissants. And that meant it was time to bake. Here's the end result. This was my first sourdough I made with it. I can't believe how well it turned out. Check out my next video where we'll be going over how to make a half-decent looking loaf like this. And that's it. That's a sourdough. Flour, water, time, a little luck. One last thing to keep in mind. Since your starter is alive, you're going to have to keep feeding it. Pretty much every day, every 2 days. Or if you want to save on flour and time, throw it in the fridge, where it'll comfortably last 5 days, even upwards of a week between feedings. Thanks for watching, and happy fermenting.